12B. We're doing A, B, and C out of order. We're starting with 12B.
That is correct. Department committee reports non-action items. 12B, 2020 budget hearing number 1. Preliminary balanced budget, statutory presentation of the 2020 preliminary balanced budget. Nikki Simmons, Controller Financial Services. Good morning.
That is the wrong presentation. Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, County Controller. I am here this morning to present to you your preliminary balanced budget for 2020. Our statutory deadline is to present this to you by October 15th, so I am here today to meet that deadline. This is administration and the budget office's proposal to you for a balanced budget for next year. There is no action needed from the board today. This is not an action item. It is just merely our proposal to you for what we believe should be your balanced budget for next year, and it is opening up the budget process and on the hearings and citizen comment ongoing for the next 2 months. We'll have 5 budget hearings and a lot of discussion and back and forth, and this is just the beginning of the process. And so we'll get started. Today we'll go over the budget process, the revenues and expenditures in the 2020 preliminary balanced budget, and then we'll actually go through the preliminary balanced budget document. I wanted to start off with a chart just showing you the population growth in El Paso County from 2019 to 2020. The State Demographer's Office is expecting about a 1.5% increase in population to 735,000 residents. And we are the second most populous county in Colorado. We are just behind Denver County, and in 2022, the State Demographer's Office projects that we will become the most populous county in Colorado into perpetuity. And so this chart represents a 24.8% increase since 2007, on average just under 2% growth per year. One way to look at the budget is on a discretionary revenue per citizen. Discretionary revenue represents the amount of money that the Board of County Commissioners has control of and how to distribute to each department. There's money in the budget that the Board of County Commissioners doesn't really have control over how to spend that money, things that go to Department of Human Services, allocations that are made by the state, money that comes in as restricted funding. So what we really look at is the discretionary revenue, and that discretionary revenue per citizen. So on a per citizen basis, the 2020 preliminary balanced budget is $179 per citizen, and that number is just basically right at 2007 numbers, $1 less. So these are real numbers. They are not inflation adjusted. So even without taking into account CPI, we are lower than 2007 numbers per citizen. In compiling the 2020 budget, we start with looking at each fund. And the first funds that we look at are your completely restricted funds, the funds that have almost all the funds come in with legally restricted uses for their revenues. The first fund we budget for is the Road and Bridge Escrow Fund. That's your fund that all the funds are due back to other municipalities through the Road and Bridge Share Back, and that is completed. We have budgeted for your Conservation Trust Fund. Those are the GOCO lottery funds, which are completely restricted for parks, maintenance, and capital. We have budgeted for your Household Hazardous Waste Fund, the Schools Trust Fund, which are fees paid at final platting and requested by districts as necessary. And then we have budgeted for your local improvement district. Right now you only have one, and that's Falcon Vista, and that is budgeted based on the interest due in 2020, and any remaining revenues are paid towards paying down the principal of that outstanding bond. So then we move on to your partially restricted funds, and our first priority in allocating your discretionary revenues is to fund your annual lease obligations in the Community Investment Fund. So we have budgeted to ensure that we have funding for your certificates of participation in capital leases, For 2020, we have $13.6 million of capital, or certificates of participation, principal and interest payments, and then $3.2 million of capital lease and other required expenditures in the CIP fund. Our next partially restricted fund is the self-insurance fund. We have insured funding for all anticipated insurance claims on the health side and the risk side. And we work very closely with our consultants on both the health side and the risk side to estimate what our funding needs are going to be for next year. On the health side, we are anticipating about a 6% increase in expenditures for health insurance. And that's actually much lower than the national average. We've done a lot of things to keep our health costs low. And one positive thing we're able to announce is that in the 2020 rates, we have not needed to pass on any health insurance premium increases to employees. So the open enrollment process that's happening here in a couple weeks to employees, they will not see any increases to the employee premiums for health insurance. And we also are ensuring that we have adequate reserves for what we call our incurred but not reported, or IBNR claims, and we work with our actuaries to determine those estimates. And then a couple other positive things to announce. We worked with our Health Plan Trust Board, and they approved positive changes to the plan, including adding behavioral health specialists to our employee clinics. As we have seen a bigger need for behavioral health within the county employee population, particularly with the jobs that we all do, human services, the caseworkers, putting people in the pressures that we do. We've felt that we needed to have more of a presence of behavioral health, and we actually felt like this eventually might be a cost savings, since we would have that available at the county employee health clinic, and we can coordinate care with the doctors we already have on staff. And we are also able to implement a Surgery Plus program, which is a net zero cost to the program, but will be a great benefit for employees in getting better outcomes for their surgeries. Then our next partially restricted fund is the Department of Human Services. We have insured funding for your statutory county match. And we go through and we look at the state fiscal year 2019-2020 allocations, and then we estimate the 2020-2021 allocations. And we did need to increase the county match to DHS by $150,000, and we accomplished that through allocating more sales tax to that fund. And we did, because we received more caseworkers and things like that, we did need to increase what we sent over there. We're required to annually certify to the state that we have budgeted enough money to accept their allocations.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. So the statutory match, is that essentially salaries?
No, it is a portion of everything. So
Okay.
each grant, and I could speak wrong, and Sam or Elaine could help me if I misspeak. They're the DHS experts. But each grant has different maintenance of efforts and or matches. So 80-20 match, or a 90-10, or some are 100% funding. And so we look at each allocation of each grant, and we just have to make sure that we have the county portion available if we're going to accept the allocation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then on the Road and Bridge Fund, we're still in a multi-year plan to address the backlog of road infrastructure. We know that addressing road infrastructure is a critical priority of the county, and we have made significant progress to that in the last few years of the county's budget. As planned in the 2019 roadmap, we did not add any funds to the ongoing amount in the 2020 roadmap. Although, if there is will of the board to change that there's always an opportunity to do that through this budgeting process. And so I'll have a slide later on in this presentation to show you where we're at with road funding. After all those partially restricted funds, we get to the general fund unrestricted. And so that's basically where we get to our biggest revenue source is sales tax. So we're talking about our 1% sales tax. And in a presentation you'll hear from me later, in our next item, on item A, you'll see that sales tax through July of 2019 is up 7.84% over July of 2018. And if you remember, we budgeted a 4.5% increase. Now with that, remember that the last 5 months of 2018, we know were artificially higher than they probably should have been because of the significant hailstorms that happened in August, like August 6th of 2018. And we know through our economists that we probably collected about $1 million in sales tax those 5 months that we otherwise wouldn't have collected. And so we're expecting not as high of increases, not that 7.84%. So conservatively estimating about 4.88% for the year as our ending number. And so we're watching that very closely. But a couple of key indicators, retail right now is up 4.51%. Food services is up 5.65%. Accommodations is up 5.23%. And if you have any questions about other industries, the NAICS codes on those, I don't present it every month, but with the monthly sales and use tax reports online, we also publish something we call Attachment A, and we hand those out to you every month that go through every industry, and you can see how much it is up year over year over year, and that we use a lot of that to kind of look at how each industry is doing and see if we can, how we predict next year. And those are available online to the public as well if they want to look at that.
Hang on, got a quick question for you. Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Yes, thank you. You may still be talking about it, but I see on the third to the last bullet that is that an aggregate ending increase of 4.88?
Yes.
Okay, because you mentioned because of the hailstorms, a larger increase in sales tax, but the 4.88, how does that compare to what we were thinking about overall?
So overall, we budgeted to be up 4.5% without the hail. And so we're thinking if you took in the hail into consideration, we're going to be up 3.13%. So we're thinking we're going to be up 4.88, and we budgeted to be up 3.13. So overall, we are estimating we have a significant increase in sales tax. We're estimating to be up about $2.5 million in sales tax for the year. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
I think so, yes, thanks.
Okay. Excuse me. So for the 2020 preliminary balanced budget, staff is recommending an increase for 2020 of 4.5% over our 2019 estimate. And that leaves a 2020 preliminary budget of $118.2 million for your 1% unrestricted tax. Oops. This chart just shows that trend of how our sales tax is growing, showing our 2019 and 2020 projected numbers at the end. And you can see those dips back in 2008, 2009, where our sales tax did drop during the Great Recession. All right. So our second largest revenue source is property tax. And this was a reassessment year and a very large one. You've had our county assessor, Mr. Schleicher, up here numerous times talking about the increased valuations in the county. The overall county valuation went up 14.6% this year. And unfortunately, due to our Tabor caps in property taxes, we are not able to capture all of that this year. So we, fortunately, are able to issue a temporary mill levy reduction. And we're estimating that right now at 0.586 mils. And so on a $300,000 house, a household would see about $12.57 reduction on their property tax for a temporary reduction due to that Tabor property tax credit. So without that temporary reduction, the mill levy would be 8.161, but with that reduction, we're estimating it at 7.575. We will get a final certification evaluation from Mr. Schleicher's office at the end of November, so we will have final numbers at our OAB in December. And in addition to that, we have a 2018 overage from overcollections from 2018. of $4,025,000. So on a $300,000 house, this is an additional Tabor credit that will be applied on each property's tax bill, estimated $11.07 on a $300,000 house. So one is a temporary mill levy reduction, and one is a tax credit. And so our net property tax revenue after that 2018 refund is $53.8 million. So on the next slide is a chart that shows our property taxes. You'll see that we have the full 57.8 to show the trending of how property taxes would come in if we weren't issuing the credit for 2018, just to show how the trending is, because that's how the property taxes would be if we weren't issuing a credit based on prior year over collections. Just because this is the year we chose to refund it in, to show how the valuations are happening. So this is a 2019 property tax per citizen, which is the most current data we have for 10 county comparisons. So these are the 10 large counties in Colorado and their property tax per citizen. And as you can see, we're very much the lowest, but as a caveat, and to be very transparent, at least I've looked into the lowest three, or all 10 of these don't necessarily have a sales tax. But the Mesa, Arapahoe, they do. We are by far the lowest tax per citizen. The other revenue items that we very carefully looked at, or very carefully look at all revenue items when we're going through the budgeting process, but a revenue that we wanted to point out significant changes to you from the 2019 budget to the 2020 budget. Treasurer fees are increasing about $240,000, and that simply has to do with the fees that they collect based on collecting property taxes on behalf of other jurisdictions. Clerk and recorder fees are increasing about $250,000, and that is just due to increased transactions within the clerk and recorder's office. And interest earnings, we're budgeting about for $3 million next year, which is up $1.3 million over this year's budget of $1.7 million. So expenditure budgets, we budgeted to retain 2019 expenditure budgets. We started that with the baseline, and then we increased utility budgets by $40,000 to ensure we can pay our utility bills. Then we go through the critical needs process as outlined in the financial roadmap. In addition to that process, we have a one-time, or I guess it's not a one-time thing, it's going to happen every 12 to 13 years. We budget on a modified accrual basis. And what that means is we accrue things on an accrual basis, except for on payroll. We do that on a cash basis. And so every 12 to 13 years, depending on leap years and things like that, when we have a 27th paycheck, because we pay biweekly in arrears, we will have a one-time cash flow budgetary impact. And this year, it's going to happen in 2020. So we'll get 3 paychecks in January, I think in July, and then in December. And that essentially is a $3.9 million one-time cash flow and budgetary impact. And those have been placed into the preliminary balanced budget document in the other budget moves column. And so you'll see a lot of other budget moves in that column. And but then those will be removed when we go to the 2021 budget. Those are not obviously ongoing increases. So after we did all of that, we started the strategy phase of the budget, and meetings were held with all of the countywide elected officials and department executive directors.
So can we go back to the 27th paycheck for just a second?
Yes.
And does each individual department within the county, the sheriff's office, are they going to pick up the 27th paycheck, each individual department, or is that something that the county is going to do?
So,
do you understand the question? I don't think I asked it well.
Each general fund is funding, the $3.9 million is needed to fund the general fund funded departments. But then each department who has any sort of restricted funding is needing to pick up their own. So like the sheriff's office has the PST funds, they have to pick up their own. So he's having,
Just for PST employees,
PST.
not for general fund employees?
not for general fund
Got it.
employees. So does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. So, was I here? Strategy phase of the budget, we held offsites, numerous meetings with countywide elected officials, department executive directors, to try to walk them through where we were at with revenue projections, the financial roadmap, current critical needs, ask them for their critical needs, making sure that we're having a very forward-thinking process. And we evaluated all of our critical needs, looked at increased service demands, population growth, any mandated pressures that are coming down on us, as we're all aware of any unfunded mandates. And we looked at additions, deletions, and continuations of the 2019 roadmap. This year, anything and everything was up for looking at. We always look at that roadmap and say, nothing's a promise. It's just a plan. But we want to make sure that the effects of our current decisions, we know what those effects of those are going to be ongoing. And so we had all of these discussions. And so here are some of our recommendations. For investment in human capital management, staff is recommending a 1.5% allocation of personnel budgets for departments and offices for critical needs as determined by elected officials and directors. High-impact road safety projects. As I mentioned earlier, the 2020 budget maintains the 2019 levels, but that does include a $10.8 million increase over 2016 levels. And then additional increases are planned in the 2021 to 2024 years of the roadmap. And I have a kind of cool chart to show you. So what this chart shows is the dark maroon color is the increases to the base budget ongoing. So these are ongoing increases. So you can see in 2017, we gave them 2.3 million. 2018, they got to keep the 2.3, and then another 1 was added. And then 2018, the gray is the Tabor ballot initiative, where $6 million went to the I-25 gap contribution, and another $6 million went to local roads. And then the $1.5 million in black was the one-time $1.5 million to I-25 gap contribution from BOCC discretionary reserves. And then, so then the 1 million plus the 2.3 became the 3.3 for 2019. Plus 2019, we added additional 7.5 million for a total of 10.8 that is in the base budget ongoing into 2020. So that base budget for 2020 is 10.8, that will stay there, and then there's additional $500,000 planned in 2021, another 4.2 planned in 2022, another additional 1 million after that for in 2023, for a total of 16 million for 2023 and ongoing. And that's what's in our current roadmap. But again, as I said earlier, this is all up for change within the budget hearing process based on direction by the Board of County Commissioners. One of the very important things that we do through the process is that we monitor our Tabor calculations. So these are our Tabor calculations for 2019 revenues. And so our very early estimates, very preliminary, I'm going to keep saying that word, these are very, very, very preliminary. There are a lot of things that can change between now and the time that we finalize these numbers next March, April, we use estimated CPI numbers. Those won't be finalized by the state until next February or March. We use growth calculations. Those won't be finalized by our assessor's office until December. We're estimating year-end sales tax and things like that. We need numbers from our State Department of Human Services. We won't get those until after the year is closed. But right now we have reserved $3 million for our Tabor overage in our 2020 roadmap. And like I said, we are very closely monitoring Tabor revenues. We have a whole team that watches them very closely and meets monthly and lets us know what's going on with those. Our emergency reserve funds, as you're aware, this year we asked for use of $1 million of them for the Sawatch Garage. So for 2019, we have just shy of $800,000 in that. We're proposing a target of $5 million for the emergency reserve. We came up with that number based on, we looked back to the 2012 to 2014 disasters. The total of those 4 nationally declared disasters cost the county about $5.3 million for our portion. And so we thought $5 million was a good target for this. Remember that these are not our only reserves. We do have another minimum fund balance policy, of which it's 10% of general fund sales tax, 0.5% of property tax, 5% of all other revenues. So we have $12.9 million in reserves and unrestricted, unassigned reserves. And those, our policy just says if they're spent into, they're available due to, or they're available for if there's a downturn in revenues, if we have an emergency, if we have unexpected expenditures, and if we do spend into them, we just have to budget to replenish them within 5 years. So, and then we also have a 3% table reserve of $7.5 million that's much more legally restricted and has to be replenished immediately. So we have asked for, in 2020's budget, to be able to use $1 million of it to address immediate critical needs, and that is included in the roadmap. This was the approved roadmap for 2019 to 2023. So the column that was officially approved by the Board of County Commissioners in December of 2018 is that 2019 column. As obviously we're just approving 1 year, we don't do multi-year appropriations. And then 2020 through 2023 was just a plan. So then we take that plan, and then the next page is the 2020 newly requested critical needs. This is every need requested that was not on the prior roadmap by all departments and offices this year. And we take those 2 documents, we have all those budget offsites, we meet with all elected officials, directors, a ton of work, our county administration and budget team meet with everybody and try to figure out what we can fund. And this next slide is our proposal to you for a balanced 2020 roadmap. So through the budget hearings on October 15th and 17th, you'll hear from every department and office who has a need in the 2020 preliminary balanced budget. And you'll hear details about each and every one of these items. And I'll briefly go through a couple of them with you today just to look through them. Show up in there, okay. Right here is the 1.5% allocation of personnel budgets. We did remove from prior roadmaps the 1% equity adjustments in future years as we move those forward to be able to fund the 1.5% this year. There's these 3 community services items are the final year of a 3-year cycle to get these positions on board. The county attorneys positions were funded at a higher level in last year's roadmap, but through discussions with them, we've been able to reduce that and phase that out a little bit easier. I did want to point out one thing. These countywide facility needs, major facility improvements. This $250,000 was actually in facilities' budget last year as a one-time need. It really should have gone in as an ongoing need, but there was a 0 in the 2022 line, and so we weren't able to put it in as an ongoing amount. So if we don't fund that this year, it would actually be a decrease to their budget. So our recommendation is to fund that this year and have it go in as ongoing so they don't receive a decrease till 2019's budget. The Humane Society contract increase was actually the contract increase we approved earlier in the year. We're funding the 2019 portion out of other underspending, but do need the increase to continue with that contract. The district attorney's support The 1.5% budget allocation is all departments besides the DA. What we worked out was each department would get 1.5%, except the DA, and then the DA would get a larger lump sum of $700,000 for the needs that he has for what he's working on over at the DA's office.
And that's in addition to the 1.5%?
It is not.
Okay.
The 1.5% is excluding the DA. The $700,000 is everything for the DA.
And what, on a kind of percentage basis, what is that?
It's like 4.85.
Okay.
And
So, but the point is, instead of 1.5%, the DA is getting 4.85%?
correct.
Okay.
Planning and Community Development has requested, they're seeing larger revenues. So their revenues are projected in this year's budget, or in 2020's budget. So this expenditure sort of goes along with the increased revenue that Mr. Dossie's shop is seeing. And then Public Works Fleet, you'll hear from Mr. Cuthbertson going forward on what those needs are for this diesel station, hydraulic lifts, and fleet replacements. Obviously, as we go through the budgeting process, we make sure everything that we're doing, we have very limited funds at the county, and we want to make sure everything that we do falls in with the strategic plan. And so we go through and make sure that everything ties in with our strategic plan and making sure that we're going in the direction we're supposed to be going. So everything that we've looking at this, goal one, maintaining and promoting a financially sustainable county, enhancing understanding of civic services. Goal three, which is maintaining and improving the county transportation system, facilities, and infrastructure. We've seen lately that that's crucial and important, and that's a priority in this year's budget. Goal five, ensuring a safe and healthy community, and that includes public safety, OEM, our buildings, and community partnerships. So, the process for this budget, these are the dates we held the offsites for budget strategy with our elected officials and departments, July 17th, September 11th, September 20th. Those days we went through financial conditions, talked about discussion of critical needs, anything budget related. Budget hearing number 1, October 3rd, presentation of the preliminary balanced budget. That's today. That's why I'm here and you get to talk to me. The budget hearings 2 and 3 are going to be October 15th and 17th. That's when you'll hear from all your departments and offices who have critical needs. I believe all your department directors are presenting regardless if they have critical needs to let you know what they're doing with the funding they do have. And you also will hear from your budget officer on any updates to the 5-year forecast. We will have one more month of sales tax data in by then, as well as maybe some updated growth numbers from the assessor's office. So we might have some updated revenue numbers to share. And you also hear from your citizen outreach group, who has been charged with being the citizen oversight group to our budgeting process. I am presenting this document and the budget process to the citizen outreach group on Monday. And budget hearing number 4, November 14th, that would be your final direction on the 2020 original adopted budget. That is the last date to make changes to the 2020 budget. And then between November 14th and December 10th, our wonderful budget staff spends a whole lot of time getting all of the documents together. And so then on December 10th, we will adopt 3 resolutions: your 2020 original adopted budget, your mill levy, and the authorization for the treasurer to transfer funds. And so at all of the budget hearings, there's an opportunity for citizen comment. We welcome it. We want it. When I walked in here this morning, we posted these budgets online. This presentation's online, the budget's online. We have copies of this budget up in the commissioner's side of the office and administration. We have copies of the budget up in the budget side. I think we put copies upstairs. Anybody wants copies, we're willing to give copies, open for public inspection officially now. Reach out to me, to our budget officer, to county administration. Would love to hear citizen comments about our budget. So I will quickly go through the preliminary balanced budget. with you. There are a few things that I want to point out in the actual document. So this is the official preliminary balanced budget document. And same numbers that were in the presentation, but daily cost per citizen versus annual cost per citizen, things like that. The overall budget, $383 million, but that, like I said, does include non-discretionary revenues, things that go to human services. You can see $148 million is legally restricted. And 61% of our budget is personnel, and that makes sense in a very personnel-heavy, we're a service-oriented organization. 51% of our budget is public safety. And you can see 8% of our budget is administration, and then on the next slide, we actually break that out for you and show you what administration means. And then to break out the public safety, 73% of that public safety is the sheriff's office, 21% DA, 4% coroner. And this is kind of a cool chart that our budget manager puts together every year, just to show you. I think it's a great chart to show citizens when they're talking about property taxes of, when you get your property tax bill and I pay $2,000, how much of it goes? So this house pays, it's a $300,000 home, pays just under $1,600 in property taxes. How much of that goes to El Paso County? How much might go to the city of Colorado Springs? School District 11, most of it's going to go to your school districts. El Paso County's portion here, $166 for general tax, and $3.54 goes to the Road and Bridge Fund. And same target you saw for the referral strategy, same operational strategy. These are the changes to the revenue budget, so you can see every revenue change from 2019 to 2020. Same things for the expenditures. I do want to point out a couple things on here. The 2020 ongoing column, I mentioned this earlier, this column has a lot of those 27th paycheck adjustments. So 3.9 million of this column has to do with that 27th paycheck. So we're not adding $6.3 million of other changes before talking to you. It's mostly that 27th paycheck. Then one other major change that would be very important to point out. On page 19, it looks like Road and Bridge has a decrease to funding. They don't. Due to funding restrictions, we had to look at costs that could be paid outside the Road and Bridge Fund and paid in the general fund. So we shifted expenditures from Fund 2 to Fund 1. And so we have moved engineering from Fund 2 to Fund 1. So essentially that's what that move is. And so you'll see an increase down here of $1.7 million, and it says fleet and engineering. That's what that large increase is, and then there's a negative here. So no decreases to the road and bridge in the budget. And then this is your overall budget increase, or budget at a glance. You can see the the 2018 Tabor refund very clearly here. And your fund balances, allocations of revenue, and that is your entire preliminary balanced budget. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Any questions for Ms. Simmons? Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have, thank you very much for the briefing. And in going through it, I've got a couple of questions, and not necessarily looking for the answers to these questions today, but they're things that I'm interested in getting an answer to, either in a future public hearing or, in a meeting. The first one, but you might be able to answer this. What is kind of your not later than date with regard to public comments for the budget? Because obviously we get to a certain point and it'll be difficult to maybe take those into consideration. So at what point would the public, it would be difficult to work any public comments? And the idea is, to let the public know when we really need these comments by.
There, let's see, obviously the sooner the better, but I would love to have public comment by the October 15th and 17th hearings have public comment at each one of those. So those would be awesome if they were able to bring those to us. And obviously outside of those hearings as well, November 14th is the absolute last day to change the budget. So if it's after that date, that we can't make changes to the budget for the original adopted budget. So I would say by the end of October would be for citizens to, if they wanted to influence the budget, they can always make comments, right? And we're always happy to hear the comments. But to influence the budget, the last day would be November 14th.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, we talked about inflation adjusted. There was the chart earlier on in the briefing, 180 per citizen in 2007, I think it was, and 179 for, I think it was 2020. And of course, there's an inflation factor involved in those number of years. So I'd be kind of interested in getting an understanding about what buying power we have in 2020 vis-a-vis comparing it to 2007. It'll obviously be less. That buying power will be less in comparison than the 179 that's in that year. And then I'd be interested in the reasons for why we have less buying power. What happened between then and now? Did we change a sales tax rate? Did we change a property tax rate? What are the factors that are causing that? I want to have an understanding of that. And let's see, the next one is, and I know that Mr. Cuthbertson is aware of this, interested in a validation, verification of the requirement for the light fleet replacement part of it. The other components, I'm good with. I know those are capital investments that are important, but I do want to have that conversation about the light fleet replacement. And then last one I have is, we did have a sale of an unused property, and there was dollars accrued from that. I don't know if that's in this budget. That's the 301, 305 property, and I don't know if that's going to count in this upcoming year or in a later year, or what the status of that is.
So that sale has not been finalized as far as I'm aware, and so that until that is more certain, that is not in this budget.
Okay. All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, and we'd be happy to get back with you about those other things.
Commissioner Williams.
I just wanted to thank the Health Trust Board and the amazing work done to make sure that our employees do not have any benefit increase next year. That's a really, really exciting item to point out. And we just want to, while we may not be able to match pay increases given in the private sector, or even, by the federal government or the state government, we are doing a fantastic job there on our health benefits.
And I would echo that. I agree. It's a wonderful board to work with.
All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we're on to 12A now.
Yes, we are. 12A would be monthly budget report, August 2019, sales and use tax report, July 2019. Nikki Simmons.
Okay.
And I think I just need to say the rest of the day is going to be the Nikki Simmons show.
It is the Nikki Simmons Show. You're welcome. Why did a couple of commissioners just roll their eyes at me? All right. Again, good morning, commissioners. I'm here to present to you your. Ooh. Sorry. That wasn't the right report. Ms. Clayton, those were July. Okay. Would you mind if we moved on to another? I don't see it. Yeah. Can we move on to another item?
All right, can we go on to item number C then?
Yes, item number C, presentation of 2019 Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, Nikki Simmons.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioners. So I'm really excited to announce that for the third year in a row, the county has received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association. This award is given to counties and municipalities who meet the highest criteria for transparency and governmental budgeting. And in order to receive the award, we have to meet a whole bunch of criteria, which recognizes us for creating an effective policy document, financial plan, operations guide, and communications device. And we have to be rated proficient in all 4 categories that they rate us in, and 14 mandatory areas, and a whole bunch of things that our team works very, very hard on every year. Super proud of them. And we just wanted to show you the award and let everyone know, and maybe get a picture with you guys. So this is the official award. There's a plaque somewhere that I think Lori had, and then I sent her out of the room. But
Yeah.
the award on the... So...
All right, so you want to do that, the picture now?
Let's wait for Lori to get back, if you wouldn't mind.
Okey-dokey. Very cool.
And then, ooh. Let's see, and I still don't have, well, you guys have paper reports, right? Do you want to just go through the budget report on paper?
Yeah, let's
we
do
can
the,
do-
well, we can't, we have to adjourn this meeting and then, I guess I could recess this meeting, come back to it. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have this meeting stand in recess.
All right.
All right, and I'll call to order the Public Improvement District 1 meeting for Thursday, October 3rd, 2019.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, County Controller. I'm here today to present to you your Public Improvement District budgets, preliminary balanced budgets for 2020. Per Public Improvement District number 1, we're estimating a total of $1.642 million in total revenue, of which $730,000 comes from transfers from PID 2 and PID 3, and $912,000 comes from road impact fees and interest. We're estimating transferring out $1.4 million to the entities which hold the credits in that PID. And that is all. So, and no action is needed on any of these.
Okay, we will adjourn Public Improvement District number 1 meeting.
Are we ready for district number 2 meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
Hang
We're going to
on.
have item number 1, the 2020 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Public and District 2. Nikki.
Good
And
morning.
just for the record, we'll call that meeting to order.
Thank you. This is your 10 mil PID, and this one, property tax revenue of $649,000, specific ownership tax of $58,000, total revenue of $709,000, total expenditures of $700,000, and of which $690,000 would be transferred to PID 1.
All right, any questions on that meeting or on this item? All right, and I guess before we move on, since these are each a different and separate meeting and Commissioner Bremer is no longer here, we should technically have a motion to excuse Commissioner Bremer from each of these meetings. So if I could have that motion, I'd appreciate it.
I move to excuse Commissioner Bremer for these PID meetings.
Second?
Well, I think we'll need to do it individually.
For PID 1, let's start with.
Well, we're already past one. We've
gotta do
adjourned
two.
it, so we're.
Okay, I stand corrected. I'd like to make a motion to excuse Commissioner Bremer for PID 2.
She's just not there for one, I guess.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez. And the chair votes aye. That passes unanimously. All right, now we will adjourn PID meeting number 2. We'll call to order.
Do we have one more item on meeting number 2?
Oh, we will recall.
No, I thought it was 2. That was
Oh, my goodness. I guess we do have 2 items on PID number 2. So we'll recall PID meeting number 2.
Item number 2, resolution approving a petition for inclusion of property within El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 2, Hannah Ridge at Feathergrass, filings number 5, 6, and 7. Lori Seago, Senior Assistant County Attorney.
Commissioners, these 3 subdivisions are located west of Mark Sheffel Road, north of Constitution, and are requesting inclusion for partial payment of the road impact fee.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn.
Do we move,
We do need a
Move
motion,
to
please.
approve.
move to approve both items 1 and 2?
Sure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
So for the clerk to the board, seems to me if we don't have a voting item, there would have been no need to excuse Commissioner Brimmer. So that was appropriate for PID item number 1 not to move to excuse her. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And your county attorney concurs.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So so now we can adjourn PID meeting number 2 and call to order Public Improvement District number 3 meeting for Thursday, October 3rd, 2019.
And there's just one item on that, 2020 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 3, Nikki Simmons.
All right. Is this a voting item?
No, Commissioner, this is
Okay.
not. This is your PID number 3. It is your 5-mil district. For 2020, we're estimating $43,000 of revenue, of which $39,000 is your property taxes. We estimate $40,000 of expenses, of which $40,000 will be transferred to PID number 1.
Are there any questions on Public Improvement District number 3? All right. Seeing none, we will stand adjourned for Public Improvement Meeting District number 3. Okay. So now we're on to Pioneer Village Roads Public Improvement District meeting, Thursday, October 3rd, 2019. Will come to order.
Item number 1, 2020 preliminary budget, balanced budget for El Paso County Public and District Pioneer Village Roads, Nikki Simmons.
Okay, this is your 2020 preliminary balanced budget for Pioneer Village Roads, PID. For 2020, we are estimating $48,000 of revenue, of which $43,000 is your property tax, estimating $50,000 for expenditures, of which $47,500 would be the contract for road maintenance in that district.
Any questions on the Pioneer Village Roads Public Improvement District meeting? All right, seeing none, we will stand adjourned for that meeting. We will call to order the Strathmore Valley Streetlights Public Improvement District meeting for Thursday, October 3rd, 2019.
Item number 1, 2020 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Public Improvement District Strathmore Valley Streetlights, Nikki Simmons.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Your Public Improvement District for Strathmore Valley Streetlights for 2020, estimating $32,900 of revenue, of which $29,000 would be property tax, $22,900 for expenditures, which $20,000 is utilities and maintenance. Any questions?
All right, any questions on that Public Improvement District agenda item for this meeting? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned for that one as well. And now we will recall our regularly scheduled Board of County Commissioners meeting. Are you ready to go on 12, I think we're on 12A?
Thanks, doing stuff.
Correct.
All right, and we'll quickly go through this. This is your 2020 monthly budget report. I will just quickly point out a few things. In your unrestricted revenue, I did want to point out this 140,000 in other taxes. That is that PILT error, Commissioner Williams, that you were working with us on, and that will be corrected by the state by the end of the year. They did short us on our PILT this year, and
Actually, I'm not working with you on it. They just dialed 6411 first.
well, I appreciate your help. And clerk and recorder fees are up significantly. I also did want to point out the 234,000 in traffic fines increased. The sheriff implemented a traffic unit, and that is why that is up so significantly. In your road and bridge fund, the one thing I wanted to point out was the $5 million. It looks like there's a variance in underspending. That is not underspending. We did appropriate a lot of that in August, and that is projects in that default subdivision thing, the default subdivision line that are projects in process. Human Services Fund, a lot of the variance in expenditures has to do with understaffing as they have vacancies from their new FTEs that have been authorized. Your Community Investment Fund will not see any activity in the expenditures until we make our next payments in November. Self-insurance on a workers' compensation and risk side. Our workers' comp claims do continue to come in very high compared to prior years, and those claims are going to have to come from our workers' comp reserves, but we do have those reserves in place. Our health trust side continues to come in very good shape, significantly under budget, which is helping us build back our reserve for our incurred but not reported claims, which we did have to dip into in 2018. General fund restricted, point out the variance in sales and use tax through July for the public safety sales tax of $675,000. And then on the expenditures side, we appropriated $1.8 million in August to allow the sheriff to do some projects that he has requested. Conservation Trust, the $247,000 positive variance in revenue will be reserved for future projects in our parks. And that is all I needed to point out in this month's budget report.
All right, any questions on 12A? All right, seeing none, thank you.
You're welcome.